Today's episode is sponsored by Lilly Anspach, career coach and founder and CEO of the Uri Group. If you're a high-performing woman questioning if the ladder you're climbing is leaning against the right wall, you are not alone. You deserve a career that aligns with who you are now, not who you had to be to succeed. In Lily's coaching program, she'll help you break free from what's holding you back, rediscover your purpose, and build a leadership path that fuels both success and fulfillment. Book a free coaching session today to start building the career you're meant to have. Visit theurigroup.com. This is the Inclusion Conversation. I'm your host, Grace Young Foster, founder and CEO of the Inclusion Initiative. I'm an adoptee, I'm a foster care alum, and I'm passionate about elevating our communities. It's time we're included and visible in the conversations about work, careers, and just life. Let's be visible and let's be loud. Join me now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Inclusion Conversation with the Inclusion Initiative. I'm your host, Grace Young Foster. I'm founder and CEO of the Inclusion Initiative. Really excited to have you with us today. We're really excited for this conversation with Lilly. And Lilly and I have really met through social, through the Adoptee Network, through, just our work and advocacy in uplifting adoptee voices, foster care alumni voices, lived experience voices. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with Lilly today as we talk about careers, life, and the intersection of our lived experience. So, Lilly, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Grace. It's really fun to be here.
Awesome. And I want to share a little bit about Lilly. Lilly Anspach is an operational excellence consultant, executive coach, and Shingo alumni. She transitioned from a senior vice president role in corporate America to found her own firm, the Uri Group. Love that. Which partners with organizations to enhance their business performance and foster a sustainable culture of excellence. In addition, to her consulting work, Lilly coaches high-performing women as they navigate the complexities of midlife and leadership. With over 25 years of leadership experience and a deep mastery of Shingo Model's principles, Lilly is dedicated to empowering women to build lives and legacies of true significance. That's really amazing, Lilly. We're going to talk a lot about networks and adoptee networks, foster care alumni networks, and, what that means to us as professionals and, why spaces like the Uri Group and why the Inclusion Initiative exist. And I'm so happy to have your knowledge, your experience, your expertise of 25 years in the corporate spaces, in leadership, in the room with us today, because, our podcast is really focused on talking about us in the workplace, building our careers, and just the lack, right, of network and resources and opportunities specifically for the Adoptee and Foster Alumni Network. And so thrilled to have you, and would love to start our conversation by learning a little bit about you and a little bit about your adoption experience.
Sure. Well, thank you for that introduction, Grace. That was very kind. And I'm thrilled to have found you. I'm so excited about the network and the possibilities. So thanks for having me. I was born in 1977. I was adopted, I think, about 20 to 30 days later. So I'm not sure quite where I was in between. But I was adopted same country, same race adoption. And grew up pretty much always knowing I was adopted. 3 years after my parents got me, they adopted another child, a little boy, also not related to me, from a different family. And we grew up in, the Midwest in America. And pretty much, growing up, we knew we were adopted, but we also knew it wasn't a topic to talk about. We were supposed to just go on as if nothing had happened and assimilate. And it was easy for us because we matched, right? We looked like our parents. We looked like we're the same height. And so we went through life, and adoption was just not something we were ever to talk about. Um, but it was always present. It was definitely in the house, and it was something we always knew about. But I grew up, I graduated, I went to college, got married, and in my early 20s, decided to look for my biological mother, and I was able to find her, and I experienced secondary rejection. It was just not a good time in her life to meet me. But I did meet some of her family. And I think about 2 or 3 months after I found her, she did call me on the phone and gave me some non identified, just like that basic generic information. This is who I am. This is what my situation was. This is why. This is who I think your dad is, and that kind of stuff. And so, it was one of those situations where I absolutely never in a million years expected her not to want to see me. I had planned for pretty much every other scenario except for that one. I couldn't even imagine it. And it was one of those things, like, I wasn't connected to an adoptee network at that time either. There were no communities. It was the early 2000s, and it wasn't anything going on online. And so it was just a knock I took in my life. And I don't think I had any idea what kind of impact that really had on me. But I just kept pushing forward, right? I was very I was one of those kids, and I've learned this later, but I was one of those kids that um, I knew that the way to keep the peace and the way to keep my security in my family was to be a performer, right? And I needed to perform. I needed to win. I needed to bring my parents a lot of pride. And the better I did, the better I performed, the more things I won, the better my life was. And so that was the way that I found acceptance. That's the way I found peace. And that's the way I found value for who I was. And so I kind of had started that in my young teen years and then just continued it into my professional career. And I was at a really great, I started work in manufacturing. That's where the majority of my work experience has been. And I was having a really great climb up the corporate ladder at General Motors, where I was working and having a lot of success. At the time, I found my mom and then was rejected by her. And then I just doubled down on the work, right? And being the best. And so that was pretty much it. And then, we didn't talk again for probably 13 years when my daughter was born. And then we kind of reconnected. We always had like the ability to text each other or call each other, and neither one of us just did. It was just kind of one of those things like, but then when my daughter was born, we reconnected and we've been in reunion since. So that's pretty much my adoption story.
Wow. Pretty much your adoption story, like all like condensed into 3 intense minutes. That's like
There you go.
that.
Yeah.
It's so, we talk about this a lot as a community, how when we share our stories, we can do it in such a concise way and in such
Hmm.
a direct way. And people are always so surprised. They're always shocked. And they're like,
Yeah.
how can you just share it like that? And you know why? Because it's a really a normal part of what being an adoptee or what being a foster alumni is like. And it's really hard to understand that because we
Yeah.
don't just normally show up in places sharing the deepest part of our lives. But for
Right.
adoptees and foster alumni, we're always like asked, right, these
Hmm.
questions, which really has conditioned us to become really good at sharing like that. And that can make it really hard when we step into spaces like professional spaces, our workplaces, to really know how to navigate, right, that piece of our
Yep.
lives and yet retain what we think is the professional decorum that we should have, which then limits
Sure.
our ability to perhaps create the relationships that we really want to create, especially
Hmm.
with our colleagues and our bosses. And, I think that it's interesting that you brought up in your story how you were at General Motors at the time where you were experiencing a really, really difficult part of your journey. And I'm really sorry you went through that. I'm really, really
Mhm.
sorry.
Thank you.
And it's so hard to, um, it's so hard when you're going through it and even after it, right? To
Mhm.
really process what that is, what that means,
Yeah, there was
how
no space for
right.
processing it. It was just something that just it happened and you just rolled right on into it. I don't even know that my husband and I even talked about it that much in terms of its relevance or importance. It was, okay, that happened, and then you just move on, right? Like,
Yeah,
and so for me, it was I wasn't even aware that it was something that I could share or that could be a part of me. It was the separate container that we put over here, and then we just get on with our lives.
right. And I think, it's been getting better in terms of education for families on how to
Mhm.
navigate things like this with their kids who are adopted or who they're fostering. It's getting better, but especially back when you were young and when you were growing up, this was such a taboo subject.
Oh,
Same
for
with
sure.
me when I was young and
Mhm.
growing up. I actually was eventually adopted into a family that had about 20 kids.
Yeah,
And s
I
and
remember that
some
part of your story, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and some did go do birth searches, and some did reunify, and it was so messy, like, good
Mhm,
intentions both on the institutional side, right? Like, the caseworkers and, the adoption agencies, good intentions on the adoptive parent side, right? Trying to be supportive, but it's
mhm,
complicated and messy, these feelings. And then
absolutely.
think about, right, the child actually going through reunification or the adult going through reunification. And
Mhm,
what I have seen and observed is many resources and support focus areas are on, the parents and families that are going to help their kid, right, navigate through this process, but not enough attention dedicated to the adoptee or
mhm,
the foster youth that's going through it.
sure.
And I hear that kind of same experience being repeated when you were in the workplace.
Mhm,
And I say this a lot too in different groups and companies that I get invited to speak at. Is there are so many employee benefits, employee resources for parents of who are going to adopt or who have
mhm,
adopted, or
yep,
parents who are going to foster or have fostered, right? Or,
mhm,
even extended leave policies for being a caretaker of older, your older parents, whatever it looks
right,
like, right?
and financial resources,
Financial
right,
resource to
oh,
adopt or to
yes,
foster,
thousands and thousands of dollars
and
available.
take leave. But when someone like you has to reckon with, I'm gonna find my birth mom, and it's gonna be
Right,
messy, and it's gonna be emotional and complicated, and then, oh, guess what? The reunion did not go well,
yeah,
and devastated, right? There's no resources for you. There's nowhere to
no,
turn to, there's no one to talk to in the workplace,
mm-mm,
and this is something that needs to be addressed. It needs to be, available. It needs to, our lived experience is what makes us whole people, and
right.
being adopted, things like reunification is a real part of the daily life of an adoptee or a foster mom.
Right, sure is, for a
Yeah, and
long time
so
even after the event happens, right? It's
exactly.
ongoing.
Exactly. And so I really appreciate you sharing that piece, especially, within this space, right? Because this is exactly what we want to start bringing more attention to, shedding more light on, and having more visibility around, right? So that we can
Sure,
change our experience at work and we can change the future experience of people who are adoptees and people who are foster alumni within these workplaces and, our career opportunities as a whole. And so I would
yes.
love for you to share a little bit more about this journey that you went through, being a leader in the manufacturing space, rising to a VP role, and then deciding, right, to make a change and pivot
Mhm.
and make the very, it's pretty scary. I did it too. A scary
Oh,
leap
yeah.
from a
It's
high-paying
terrifying.
salary job and prestige and title
Sure.
and
Mhm.
security
Right.
to start your own company. It is
Yeah.
really terrifying. And so talk
Mhm.
to me a little bit about your journey through that process and why you did it.
Yeah. Well, um, like I said, I spent 25 years just doing what you're supposed to do, right? So going to work, performing, being whoever they needed me to be, getting results, getting promoted, doing the same thing over and over, right? And I, it's interesting too because I had no intention of going into the manufacturing field. I was a piano performance major in college. I was going to be a music teacher. I was going to get married and teach lessons and raise my kids, right? Um, no plan for me to be in a manufacturing space, but just life happened that way, right? And a series of coincidences worked out for me to get in there. And to be honest with you, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Um, it it was the balance of all the things that makes me up. I loved the technical aspect of it. I liked the systems thinking. I liked the linear thinking, but I loved relationships with people too, and drawing them out and understanding why teams and groups do certain things. And so I was just naturally good at running production and running plants. And so I stayed in that space. I did take a little bit of time in the middle and started and opened my own spa, a Woodhouse Day Spa. So I did
Wow.
that for about 5 or 6 years. And then when I got done with that and sold the business, I was like, where else, what else do I want to do? And I just went back into manufacturing because it's what I knew, it's where I could get paid. And at that point, I didn't have the courage to kind of step outside of that box. And so, yeah. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I was with a company that was just super um, the culture of that organization was just fantastic. And they were really dedicated to employee development and making sure that we all had opportunities that lined up with what we were interested in. And I happened to find the Shingo Institute. And I was doing plant management at the time, manufacturing management, but I had always been using lean tools and lean manufacturing as part of what I did. And I was really interested in employee engagement and employee participation. And that was just who I was. It was something that um, I naturally did. So then when I found the Shingo Institute and I found that they taught all those things and they taught methods for it, it was like the best of the both worlds. Like all my technical stuff came together with all my personal stuff. And there was this brilliant model that did them both. And I was in complete alignment and I was so happy. And so the organization that I was with paid for me to go to all the training, invited me to actually start my own department in that organization, an operational excellence department,
Wow.
and unified the whole organization. And we went on a transformational journey towards operational excellence. And it was so fun and fantastic. And I had finally found, that perfect place for me. Um, and so I left that organization and went to another one that really needed it. Like the place that I came from was like, okay, we're kind of mostly there. We already are excellent, and we're doing all these things that are in alignment with the Shingo Institute and the principles of operational excellence. But this other place that was recruiting me was like, we need it from the ground up, right? We have a lot of gaps, and we want to just start from zero and see how far we can go. And I went there and we did that work. Um, but one of the things that I didn't probably understand was how big of a challenge that would be to go from
Yeah.
nothing to everything, right? And I didn't ask a lot of questions because I was this person, and I think a lot of adoptees end up here is I can do whatever you wanted me to do. I can be whoever you want me to be. Just give me a goal and let me go after it.
Yeah.
And I never stopped and considered, is this organization in alignment with me, my
Mhm.
personal values? Is this a good opportunity for me? Yeah, it was great money. Yeah, it was a great title. Yeah, they wanted me, but I never asked, do I want them? And so I spent the last 4 or 5 years really in an organization that I was out of alignment with. We got a lot of good things done. Um, I definitely learned so much. My business acumen went from, 50% to 110%. I learned a whole bunch of things, but I wasn't doing the work that I really wanted to do. And also at that same time, I was going through phase 2 of my reunion, and I was meeting my biological father's side of the family, and I was entering into a new time of healing when it came to my adoption trauma as well. So I had always approached my healing in a very systematic way. I'm like, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and it's going to be a intellectual exercise, and we're going to fix it all, and we're going to be healed and mended, and we're going to put a bow on it. And I never really allowed the deep feeling of that to happen. I had always approached healing from an intellectual standpoint and never let it hit my heart and my soul and really reconciled with the loss and the grief that I had. And so I was reprocessing all of that at the height of my career, when from the outside it was perfect, but on the inside I was betraying my own ideals. I wasn't in alignment with what I wanted to do. I was making compromises for the good of the organization without considering myself. And I was doing this healing, and it all kind of just blew up. And it was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This organization's fantastic. They're doing what they need to do. They've never been shy about it, but it's not in alignment with me. And so I kind of had a little bit of a crisis where I was like, I I don't know where I'm going and what's next, but I can't do this anymore. And as I stepped away from that, and I've spent the last year kind of building my new business and healing and understanding, oh, this is why I did this, right? I understand how my adoption trauma and other traumas in my life created a situation where I thought being resilient was a really, really great thing. But it turns out that that constant self-reliance and that constant expectation to overcome didn't serve me in places where I shouldn't have had to overcome certain things, where I didn't need to be hyper resilient, that I could have and should have asked for some help and some guidance. And so I really just kind of over the last year have unpacked all of that and kind of rewritten the story of my career and understood it through the lens of an actual healed person, and as I did that, it led me back to the Shingo model and the operational excellence work that I want to do with companies. But me being able to say unapologetically, I'm only going to do it with these kind of companies.
Yeah.
They have to be purposeful in their aim. They have to be authentic in what they're trying to do. They have to really want to develop their culture and their people, not just for the result they're going to see on the bottom line, but because that bottom line result then will be sustainable. And also, it's just good to do good business well and to make good employees and good contributors to our community and elevate ourselves. It's not just about making money and creating value for the next stakeholder, then the next one, then the next one. There has to be something more about what we're doing. And the Shingo model promotes that. And that's where my heart is too. So that's kind of what my journey's been. So I decided to say, you know what, I've always put I've always put the oh the ownership of my success in other people's hands. I've always been
Mhm.
able to say, well, I did so good there because that person helped me, or I did so good there because that company was like this. And which that's true, right? You definitely have to have people who reach out and give you a leg up. You definitely have to have organizations that fit and align with you and provide for you the opportunities to grow, but you also have to be the person willing to take it. You also have to be the person willing to maximize it. And I never gave myself that credit. I was always saying the external factors are why I'm here, which was why it was hard for me to leave my last job. Well, I'm only a senior vice president making this much money because they gave me the chance.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's something about me that's worth that anyways. And I really had to figure that out. And so I put a stake in the ground and said, you know what, I do have um, tons of experience, tons of knowledge, and tons of wisdom, and a unique way of representing this material and helping organizations. And I'm going to put a stake in the ground and say, if I follow who I am and what I believe about business, that I'll attract the people who want the same and trust that I don't have to compromise, that I can stand fully in who I am and still do great work and probably
Yeah.
do more, actually.
No, right. And I love that you came to that realization. And the key word there is value. You
Yeah.
realized you had value beyond what people were telling you you were valuable for. And I bring this back right to our community of adoptees and foster alumni. We've been told our whole lives what our value is. Our
Mhm.
value is how we have fulfilled and filled, completed the family. That's our
Right,
value. And then we grow
right.
up having to repeat that and hear that over and over again. And we're never really allowed. And I should say, many of us, because some are, right? Some have
Right.
just amazing, incredible experiences and amazing families. And some have that good experience, but even so, right, are never really truly allowed to step into their own and understand that they are valuable as people, period. They are valuable because they are them, period.
Mhm.
And again, there's so many good intentions out there, but with because of the lack of education and resources, and frankly, focus on adoptees themselves and foster
Mhm.
alumni and foster youth themselves, these are the gaps that are missing for us as we step into the adult world. And value is huge. Understanding that we are valuable just as people is huge.
Mhm.
And from what I'm hearing from you, what I've heard from so many people with our shared lived experience, and what I experienced myself, was that I didn't understand I had this innate value just being me.
Right.
It was enough to just be me. And you talked
Yeah.
about, right? Like, I can be anything you want, I can do whatever you want. Let me
Mhm.
prove my worth. And I know
Yes.
that adoptees and foster alumni, we're not the only groups that struggle with this, but we
Right.
definitely do. And it makes me sad for, you know, myself personally that it took me so long to figure this out. It makes me sad that you had to go navigate, almost 25 years of your career until this clicked for you. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's not
Right.
okay.
No, that's not how to
And
work.
right,
Yeah.
and part of, the gap for me in the workplace where this disconnect of value is happening, right, was because I was to your point, we talked about this earlier, we weren't meeting people like us in the workplace.
No.
We had
Mm-mm.
no idea each other really exists, right? We're such an invisible identity at work because we are
Yes.
not made to feel like we can talk about it. There aren't others that are talking about it, right? The visibility is so lacking. And so I wanted to ask you, what how you think your experience might have been different had you had professionals in your life that showed up
Mhm.
as adoptees, that showed up as foster alumni, that shared these experiences with you. How might that have helped you in your career? How might that have changed you on your professional trajectory? If you know, you might not know, but what
Mm.
are your thoughts?
No, my first thought is that I would just have understood myself earlier, right? And I can't stress that enough because even like you said, while other people may have something like the imposter syndrome at work, right? That's not unique to adoptees and foster youth alumni, not at all. But the reason we have imposter syndrome at work and the way it manifests itself is quite different than other people for other reasons. And I just think because adoption is not considered broadly a trauma to begin with or anything that needs to be special because it happened and that we've got good families and we're here at work and what is there to talk about, right? Because that's not recognized. It's there's no way for us to express that as something that we need support with. And so for me to have known somebody, to have if I could imagine being 25 and seeing the inclusion initiative and hearing these conversations that you're recording and having the trainings and the understandings, I would have figured myself out a lot more quickly and would have saved myself a lot of waste. Right. I'm proud of where I got in my career. I'm proud of my career. I'm proud of the work that I did. And I was able to do all of that despite, but the waste and the things I had to deal with while I was doing it were completely unnecessary, and I could have, saved myself that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the biggest
100%.
thing. just understand myself better and see, oh, that's why. Okay. And not pathologize it, but say, okay, that's the reason, that's the root cause. Knowing the true root cause, now we can put strategies in place to mitigate that so we can move on in a more efficient and effective way.
Yeah. I that really resonates with me. Just the ability to truly understand who we are. A lot of us are figuring out what that means later in life.
Hmm.
And, sometimes I get really envious of, Gen Z who, I mean, they know who they are. They're
They
just
do, don't
so
they?
confident and vibrant and sure of their identities. And that's kudos, right, to all the generations before them that have
Yeah.
done this hard work to help
Hmm.
Gen Z be able to step into their own
Right.
and really be who they authentically want to be. And man, if I could
Yeah.
have done that
Agency. Yeah.
agency, yep, in my
Agency
20s.
is it. Like that is it, like, I mean, I just can't imagine how I would have moved through the world with that sense of agency. Um, it's fascinating. I'm so happy for them, but I'm also happy for us because we
Yeah.
have it now and we have a lot of space and a lot of road in front of us where we have a lot of opportunity to make impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And so speaking of agency, speaking of impact, I want you to share with our audience a little bit about your coaching work, who
Mhm.
you coach, how they can find you, and also with the Uri group companies that who might need you, like what are some characteristics, right, of companies that might
Sure.
need you and not know it yet, and how do they
Right.
find you?
Well, let's start with companies first. So the companies that need me are companies that know they need to improve and they know they need to have continuous improvement in place. And maybe they've made attempts at that, but it hasn't been sustainable, right? And they are at a place where they need to have that competitive advantage and they need it to be something that's lasting. And nowadays, the competition for great employees and for great human resources is really, really high. So if you have an organization that doesn't have a great culture, that isn't invested in people, that doesn't care about their engagement, that doesn't work to bring out the best in them, those folks are going to go somewhere else. And when you're losing your greatest resource, your greatest engine of creating innovation and value in your organization, you're no, I don't care how great your strategy is and how wonderful your market position is and what your balance sheet says, it's not going to last.
Yeah.
And so the unique value that I bring to organizations is teaching them that there is a model for doing this. There is a way to build in, intentionally architect your organization to be operationally excellent. We have systems that we can intentionally put in place. We have tools that we can use, and we have different ways to operationalize behaviors. We spend a lot of time teaching leadership behaviors and then hoping that folks will go out and live out those behaviors without really giving them a structure of how. So if you build systems and you have the aim of getting a particular leadership behavior from them, you can almost operationalize and unintentionally get exactly what you're looking for while you get results in the meantime, building a culture that'll sustain that. So that's what the business side of things is. And then, really, to be honest, what I did is I kind of just took the Shingo model for operational excellence and said, well, why don't I apply that to myself and the way that I'm trying to build my
Yeah.
agency, not just my business, but also me, the system of me. I am an ecosystem, my family, my career, my life, my health. And if I'm using these principles, which are universal, respect for every individual, create value for the customer. If I'm coaching a person who's going through a transition or wanting just to level up with their life and improve themselves, I'm my own customer, right? Right. So just like we were talking about before, if we're not thinking about ourselves and really pouring into ourselves and saying, what is it that we want to be and move through life with intention, then we're probably going to be a little haphazard. So I really just I apply a lot of the Shingo model and principles in my coaching experience to help people, focus on the process and solve problems and live with intentionality and align their true values. And even if they don't know their true values, let's explore it and find it. And then it's like align that to the work that we do so that we can live purposefully and, avoid a lot of that waste, right? The wasted time, the wasted energies, the going after different projects and interests that maybe aren't exactly what we need to do so that the thing we really want to do in this life can be laser like focused and we can equip ourselves to be successful. So any company or any person looking to change, improve, or transform, I can help them with that and applying the models and sharing a lot of both experiences. I've walked companies through the process. I've walked friends and family and myself through the process. And so I think it's really neat to see the two come together because fundamental principles are fundamental principles. They're truths that guide outcomes in life. And if we use those to build our systems and our the way we act and live in the world, then we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's so uniquely me too, because like the soft, feely, healing stuff is like, okay, that's good. But I really like tell me how to directly apply things and get
Yeah,
results. And I think that's just so if you're that kind of person, like if you're an airy fairy, I just want to talk about it for a while. I'm probably not your coach. But if you really want somebody that's going to say, hey, let's get serious, let's get this stuff aligned and let's put a plan together and then let's experiment our way and find out what works, then you're probably a good match for me.
that's awesome. I love that. I love that you really know who's going to work
Yeah.
well under
Yeah.
your model. So,
Hmm.
and then it's theyurigroup.com. I have that on the bottom of
Hmm.
the screen. We'll have that in the show notes. And then what about you said you coach women specifically, yes?
Yeah, specifically, but it's not like I wouldn't coach men. I mean, I think, you get into that when you start launching your business, you get into that almost, it's helpful, but it's almost kind of overly helpful. Like find your niche, right? And you can over develop a niche. I really just want to work with people. So whoever, however you identify is fine with me. As
And
long
you
as you identify as a results oriented improvement person.
yeah, exactly. You want to do
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah, you wanna do the work, then we're good.
Yeah. And specifically those who identify as entering or in middle age.
For sure. I
Yeah.
think so. I think that's where my unique point of view can really, really accelerate fast learning. That's not to say that a 20-something couldn't, benefit from the conversation, but I think that I'm just uniquely positioned to have those conversations.
Okay. Wonderful. Awesome. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the work that you do, the values alignment that you stay true to, and just your perspective as an adoptee, as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a corporate leader. It's really been awesome to share this space with you. And
Mhm.
I love to do these fun series of questions at the
Oh, yeah.
end of our conversations to help the audience get to know you a little bit better. And so I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions. Now, I did not send these
Okay.
ahead of
No,
time
you
and for
didn't.
on purpose because I want you to just
Okay.
answer. Just
Okay, will
answer
do.
the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
And so there are 5 questions. So here we go.
Okay.
Ready? Favorite
Yes.
food?
Pizza.
Mm. What's your superpower as an adoptee or foster alum?
Being able to see people.
Oh, yeah. Love that. What did you dream of doing when you were a kid?
I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a rock star.
I can see that.
In a punk rock band, yes, that's what I
Oh,
wanted
I
to
love
do.
that. Oh, what's
Yep.
one thing on your bucket list?
Mm, it's the thing on my bucket list. So I want to run the UTMB. So it's a 100-mile foot race, around Mont Blanc, and
Yeah.
I will do it. I will someday. We'll see. But that's my huge bucket list. I don't wanna just go. I don't wanna just hike it. I wanna be in the UTMB race under the start line and go on that journey.
Oh, I love that. Have you done ultras yet?
Yes, I have.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I'm
Yeah.
just a marathoner. I haven't done ultras yet.
Oh,
We'll
yeah,
have to talk. We'll have
just
to
a
talk.
marathoner.
Well,
Girl,
I
if
mean,
you can run a
ultras are
marathon,
completely
you
different.
could go 5 more miles, 6 more miles. Yeah, you know what? They're different because they're less stressful than a marathon. I think
Oh,
so.
okay.
I would say my hardest race I've ever done was my very first marathon, and one of the easiest races I've ever done has been an over a 55K. So
Hmm.
it's a there's a mind shift change that happens, a mindset change that happens, uh, and for me, there's more relaxation in an ultra.
All right. Final question. What is a piece of advice that you want to share with our audience?
Connect and connect in forward looking spaces, right? So we all know that adoption has been traumatic in our life, that foster care placement and being in the system has been very difficult for us. So it's good. And how are we going to move forward then? How are we going to take those things that are traditionally seen as deficits and turn them into superpowers and really amplify our lives? Don't get stuck. And this happened to me. Move that into, and this is what I'm going to do with it. And this is what I'm going to do to make sure it happens to less people behind me. And so that's probably my biggest thing. Deal, mourn, understand, and then let's powerfully move ourselves forward.
Yeah, that's really wise. Thank you for sharing that. Lily,
You're
thanks so
welcome.
much for being a guest on our show. And to learn more about Lily, obviously, again, go to theurigroup.com.
Mhm.
Ways to get in touch with Lily will be in the show notes. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, share, and follow us. Check out our show notes to know where to find us on social, and our website is theinclusioninitiative.com. If you're an adoptee of color or a foster care alum and you want to join our professional community, it's free, by the way, hit me up via DM or you can find our email in the show notes. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.